New York City, March 1931. The Pulp magazine, Astounding Stories, publishes a short story called The Meteor Girl. The tale is centered around a meteorite that creates a window in space, one that allows the protagonists to travel between distant locations in an instant. It is the very first science fiction reference to what has become known as a Stargate. Anybody that's seen or read any modern-day science fiction, there's always the story that somebody walks into a gate, a doorway, a hole in the sky, some kind of opening, and they end up somewhere else. Or they could be in another time. What we're describing here is going from some point A in space and time to some other point B in space and time, without traveling through the normal path to get there, going through a shorter path. Stargates are a shortcut through space and time. The galaxy is 100,000 light years across. It would take 100,000 years to go across the galaxy. But if you have a Stargate in principle, you could do it in the blink of an eye. Currently, Stargates are only known to exist in the realm of science fiction. But in 1935, physicists Albert Einstein and Nathan Rosen proposed that creating shortcuts through space and time is theoretically possible. When this idea was first postulated, it was in fact called an Einstein-Rosen space bridge. So Einstein and Rosen were working on general relativity, and they had the idea that you could create a bend or warp in spacetime where you can connect point A to point B and make the pathway there much shorter. In addition to connecting to distant points in space, some scientists have suggested that Stargates may facilitate an even more profound type of journey. So when we talk about a Stargate or a wormhole, the question is it just from point A to point B within this universe? Or could it also be through those other dimensions that could possibly exist, or even through other universes? Just like when Alice fell through the rabbit hole, she ended up in Wonderland. While terms like Stargate and wormhole conjure up visions of the future and space-age technology, ancient astronaut theorists suggest that the idea of such gateways has existed in the human consciousness for thousands of years, and they say evidence of this can be found within religious traditions throughout the ancient world. All around the world, we have myths and legends of beings coming and going through gates. The Anunnaki, gods in ancient Sumeria, were constantly coming and going through gateways. In Egypt, we learn of the portals of Ptah and the Pharaoh, scaling a ladder to heaven and going through the portal of the gods. This idea of the Stargate is everywhere. When I think about wormholes in the multiverse, one of the first things that comes to mind is the ancient idea of Vishnu. When he would exhale, he would excrete beads of sweat and moisture. That each one of these was a universe. And in many cases, the description is that when Vishnu was dreaming, this is a new universe that Vishnu is creating. Now, Vishnu then used many different avatars and went to many different of these realities, universes, multiverses, and had adventures. So how did he go from wherever he was into these different realities that he had then created? There must have been a Stargate that enabled him to go from universe to universe. So going back through thousands of years, across different cultures, all across the planet, we have these stories of people traveling to other realms. It really does suggest that there is a possibility that many ancient cultures had some understanding of portals or gateways to other worlds. There is the story of the Bifrost Bridge in Norse mythology, and what this is able to do is take a person from out of this realm into some other place. Our ancient accounts of beings passing through gates or doorways, descriptions of a form of Stargate travel. Perhaps further clues can be found by examining a Mysterious stone feature found high in the Andes Mountains. Lake Titicaca, Peru, carved onto the sandstone. Face of the Ayamarca Mountain is a T-shaped doorway, known as the Gate of the Gods. The Gate of the Gods is a vertical outcrop of sandstone which is composed of 3 depressions. The central one, which is a T-shape, is about 6 feet tall, so a normal human could stand up in it. And then to the left and the right are vertical depressions, which go from the very bottom to the very top, which would be a distance of approximately 20 feet. Nobody knows how old it is, and nobody knows who made it, while there is no written record to suggest why it was built. Local legends give detailed accounts of people mysteriously disappearing in front of the doorway and even strange beings coming through. Local legends tells us that the gods would use this as a stargate through which they would come and go. The myth and legend attached to it suggests that their key to this gateway is this golden disk of the sun god, and all the stories tell us that the sun god, Inti, came down to earth and was worshipped by the Incas. Perhaps it was Inti himself who brought this key to the Stargate to earth originally. While the Inca believed the Gate of the Gods was created thousands of years ago, there is at least one account of this gateway being activated much more recently, when Spanish conquistadors arrived in Peru in the 16th century. According to legend, when the Spanish arrived, a priest from a nearby temple took a golden disc from that temple and went to the Gate of the Gods, put the golden disc in the T-shaped gate, opened it up, and went through it. It seems that what's happening today is that we're coming back around to understand the concept of the Stargates, just as the ancients did, and perhaps to duplicate the technology that extraterrestrials were utilizing in opening these Stargates to other realms. Are these ancient Stargates just the product of our ancestors' folklore? Or might this kind of interstellar travel have actually existed in the distant past? Perhaps further clues can be found by investigating another site believed to transport people through space and time. Central Sri Lanka, overlooking the small town of Aralaganwila, stands the lush Donegala mountain range. Its peak reaches heights of over 900 feet, and visible among them is a strange outcropping that is almost entirely round. This is a very remarkable geological formation, circular in shape with a completely flat platform on the top of it. For locals, the mountain is famous not just for its unique shape, but for the number of reports of unidentified aerial phenomena at the site. Everybody calls it Alien Mountain because this is a UFO hotspot. At least 24 UFO sightings have been reported in 2023 alone, and many people claim weird activities around the mountain. The recent sightings are just the latest in a string of mysterious events at the mountain that date back hundreds of years. The mountain is associated with various different legends in Vedic tradition. It's actually said to be the landing place of the god Ravana. It was said that he could actually fly this device and land on the top of that. Donegala mountain is also connected with the Buddha. In fact, there's a cave in the side of this mountain which has a statue of the Buddha, and it's said that he originally used this area as a kind of way to explore the different astral planes. So does this suggest this is some kind of portal area or Stargate? The Buddha is believed to have lived during the 6th or 5th century BC, and according to ancient Buddhist stories, he demonstrated the ability to teleport instantly from one location to another. And as far as ancient astronaut theorists are concerned, early accounts of the Buddha sound very much like descriptions of an extraterrestrial. Some of the earliest representations and some of the earliest recordings of Buddha does not show or describe Buddha as the size of a regular human being, but actually up to 9 feet tall and with blue skin, and his arms reached all the way down to his knees. And before the term Buddhism existed, the original term for Buddhism was the worship of the cosmic wheel. The whole concept of Buddhism began when this tall, blue-skinned person came down in a gigantic wheel of fire and then started to teach mankind in various disciplines. So that, to me, is eternally fascinating, because it would support the idea that Buddha was an extraterrestrial. Is it possible that the Buddha was an otherworldly being who accessed a stargate near Donny Gala Mountain, as told in local legends? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes and propose that another site nearby contains physical evidence that it, too, may once have been the location of a stargate. Anuradhapura, Sri Lanka. This sacred city, dating back to 377 BC, is at the heart of the local Buddhist culture. It is one of the most visited places in the world, drawing pilgrims, tourists, and historians alike to its ancient dome temples and massive shrines known as stupas. But perhaps the most intriguing attraction is a mysterious petroglyph called the Sekwala Chakraya. The Sekwala Chakraya carving in Sri Lanka is carved onto this rock face, and there's actually carved stone seats on the opposite side for people to sit there and gaze into it. Now, traditionally, it's like a cosmological map that the ancient people they would talk about. But could it be something else, because the symbols on it are very unusual? Locals believe that this is a stargate, that Buddha used the Stargate 3 times to go to other planets. And they believe that if you go and meditate in front of the Stargate, you can actually open the Stargate using the power of your mind, and you can go to another dimension. In the local dialect of Sinhalese, Sekwala Chakraya translates as universal cycle, and according to some scholars, the unique images are various astronomical symbols representing different parts of the cosmos. The Sangwila Chakra was written about as early as 1911 by a British archaeologist named Harry Bell, and he came to the conclusion that it represented the cosmos as a whole. There is an outer ring showing the primeval waters of chaos, and inside this are 7 concentric rings, one inside the other. And this is a very typical symbol used to represent a portal or stargate. It's been suggested that the petroglyph at Sekwala Chakra is similar to geometric mandalas, and a mandala itself is considered to be a sort of a consciousness portal, a mental portal. Mandalas are important components in both the Buddhist and Hindu faiths. These elaborate circular patterns are a spiritual symbol for the universe, but also represent the realm of the gods. They act as an aid in meditation, and according to Buddhist mythology, can be used to transport oneself across space and time. Could the fact that the Sekwala Chakra carving resembles a mandala provide another clue about its true purpose? The symbols on this stone. There's lines, there's geometric figures. Everything we're seeing here is reinforcing that this was a portal of the gods. Could the mysterious carving found in Sri Lanka indicate the presence of an ancient stargate, as legend suggests? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and they believe further evidence that such stargates still exist on Earth can be found at sites around the world where people have mysteriously vanished without a trace. Fort Lauderdale, Florida, December 5, 1945. 5 Navy torpedo bombers, collectively known as Flight 19, take off for what is supposed to be a routine training mission over the Atlantic Ocean. This flight was headed eastward toward their mark It actually reached it and headed north from there. Then all of a sudden, bizarre things started to happen. Their navigational equipment went awry. Their compasses started turning in different directions. One of the pilots reported that they had started flying over land, and it looked like the Florida Keys below them, which were in the exact opposite direction. Many miles away. They should not have been over the Keys at all. They decided to swing low under the clouds and were never heard from again. All told, 27 airmen disappeared during the Flight 19 incident. But it is only one of countless mysterious events that have happened in the exact same area, which has become known as the Bermuda Triangle. It's said that within that triangle, all sorts of strange, natural and unnatural phenomena have happened. Several hundreds, if not thousands, of ships have mysteriously disappeared. Airplanes disappeared as well. But it's not only mysterious disappearances that have been documented in the Bermuda Triangle. People have also reported witnessing what they believe could be Stargates. We have many personal stories of people who've been involved in this, who've been even caught up in vortexes, and what they think is a hyperspace portal that was going to send them to another planet, but they somehow got out of it. There appears to be, in nature, the possibility of crossing thresholds of energy, of electromagnetic phenomena associated with thunderstorms that can perhaps open up portals in space-time that we never would have thought possible. An analogy is that lightning is still poorly understood. Lightning typically carries several million volts. This is not sufficient voltage to jump from a cloud miles above the ground to the ground or between clouds, yet nature does it. Combine that with the strange location of the Bermuda Triangle, where the collision point of these cold and warm currents, you can have a playground for exotic physics. I believe skeptics propose that the notoriety of the Bermuda Triangle has led people to jump to extraordinary conclusions for events that likely have conventional explanations. But ancient astronaut theorists point out that stories of strange vortexes and mysterious disappearances are not only coming from the Bermuda Triangle, but have been reported in numerous other locations. June 23, 1950. Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 2501 departs LaGuardia Airport en route to Seattle. On board are 58 passengers, but 5 hours into the flight, as it crosses Lake Michigan, air traffic control loses radio contact, and the airplane mysteriously disappears. A widespread search spanned the entire area, dragging the bottom of the lake and using sonar technology to look for debris. But the wreckage was never found. 2 hours after the last transmission of Flight 2501 to local police officers reported seeing a red light over Lake Michigan that lasted for about 10 minutes. Red lights have been seen over that particular area of Lake Michigan since at least as far back as 1913. The area of the lake where Flight 2501 vanished has become known as the Michigan Triangle and has been the site of bizarre sightings and unexplained activity for over 100 years. In the Michigan Triangle, there's a tremendous amount of UFO activity. UFOs are seen coming up out of the water, going down into the water. There's a number of missing ships and airplanes in that area. One of the most fascinating cases to have occurred along the Michigan Triangle is the case of Stephen Kabotsky. Now, he's a 23-year-old student who was cross-country skiing in February 1978 close to the lake. When he didn't return, the police were called and they went out looking for him and did an investigation. Stephen Kabotsky's backpack, skis and poles were eventually found at the very edge of Lake Michigan in the city of Holland. At a nearby police investigators found a set of tracks leading out onto the frozen lake. Now, what's really interesting is that the police followed the tracks and they went out onto the ice and then they disappeared. There was no sign that the ice was broken, no evidence of any scuffle. The tracks simply vanished. The authorities concluded that Stephen Kabotsky had fallen into the ice and drowned. But over a year later, he suddenly reappeared, more than 600 miles away in Massachusetts. According to the Contemporary reports, Stephen woke up on a grassy knoll about 40 miles from his father's house. So he went home and, of course, his family were just shocked. They thought he was dead, but he was confused. Because, in his mind's eye, he'd only been gone for a few moments. Is it possible that he got caught up with a Stargate in the vicinity of Lake Michigan, which somehow transported him to Massachusetts? Stephen Kabotsky's bizarre experience is one of the most incredible incidents to occur in the area of the Michigan Triangle, and researchers note that the location where he reappeared is only 150 miles west of an equally mysterious area known as the Bridgewater Triangle. For centuries, the local Native American tribes have claimed that this 200 square mile region is home to otherworldly beings called Pakwajis, beings who suddenly appear out of thin air. The Pakwajis is described within Algonquin folklore, and it's a type of little people that have been seen for hundreds of years by Native American peoples, telling us that these entities can quite literally walk through portals into our world. When we look at what's happened in the Bermuda Triangle, the Michigan Triangle, the Bridgewater Triangle, it leads to the conclusion that there are these naturally occurring stargates or portals on the Earth, and there are probably more out there that we've yet to discover. Is it possible that stargates already exist on Earth? And if so, are they the product of environmental conditions, or are they gateways that were created by extraterrestrials to travel to our planet? Perhaps further clues can be found by examining research being conducted by the US military to create a wormhole. Lincoln County, Nevada, 1984. Counterintelligence Officer Richard Doty begins a new assignment at the top secret US military base Area 51. What he is tasked with is highly classified, but years later he comes forward and makes a remarkable claim. He says that during his time at Area 51, he observed a military experiment that succeeded in ripping a hole in the fabric of space and time. I was some distance away in a control center watching the experiment. I was just an observer. I'm not a scientist. And when they generated this beam through this magnetic field, what I saw was a wavy orb appearing. The orb was moving a little bit. The background was real wavy, almost as if you were looking at a hot sidewalk during the summertime. And it became larger and larger and larger and larger. And behind it, there was a flashing light. And when I asked a scientist who was standing right next to me, what did we just see? He said, we just opened a fabric of space. Doty claims that the team used argon gas and anti-magnetic sheaths to try to keep the portal open. It worked for only a few seconds, but it was enough time for researchers to observe what was on the other side. The scientists believe that you open a fabric of space, you're in a different dimension. That's an entirely different dimension, and possibly an alternate universe. That's the way they explained it to me. After this initial experiment, Doty was informed that the research team successfully replicated the results. After the first test, all the scientists were fascinated and thrilled. and they wanted to do more and more and more. And in a period of about 6 weeks, they did 5 different tests, similar to the first test, opening the portal. Now, they wanted to use more energy. They had a high-energy laser. They wanted to try a chemical laser, which is a little bit different than an energy laser. They actually built a brand new power plant, and all of that electricity was being used for this particular project. They tried to get as much energy as they could to be directed at one point to see how much of it they could open up. According to Doty, this is only one of many experiments the US government has conducted to try to create portals. He believes these programs began over 50 years ago and might continue today, ever since the Central Intelligence Agency Office of Scientific Intelligence realized that there were theories about wormholes. They engaged in a number of operations over the years to try to prove wormholes were possible, and there were a number of operations. The one I worked on was Project Jackknife. The project, it started before my time, probably started in the early 70s, and I only was in it up until about 1990. After that, somebody else took over. But those programs continued on and on and on, and I can guarantee you, even today, that there's some type of experiment going on. Could it be that for the past 50 years, scientists working for the United States government have secretly been attempting to create a real, traversable Stargate? And if so, is it possible that they have succeeded? It's a fascinating thought that the US military has been working on Stargates and wormholes and portals, and we might imagine that if they've poured enough money and resources into creating these Stargates, that maybe they already have this technology and have refined it to a point where they're able to teleport people and objects from place to place. This isn't just science fiction. This isn't just technology that would be fun or nice to have. Sad to say, of course, a lot of this probably would be weaponized. I mean, imagine not having to launch a nuclear missile, which can be detected, tracked, intercepted, and then the opposition press the button and it's armed again. If you could just send your atomic weapons through a portal and instantly destroy the other nation's offensive capabilities. This is war-winning technology, and that explains the secrecy. But according to Doty, the potential dangers of a Stargate are far greater than its use as a weapon. Once that portal opens, what if something from the other side comes into our dimension? What do we do then? How do we handle these entities, or whatever they are? This is really difficult to understand, but what if we opened a portal and it dealt with a parallel universe, and now we've got people from that parallel universe stepping into this universe? What would happen to us? According to most scientists, even if some secret government program has managed to open a small window in the fabric of space, as Richard Doty claims, it's unlikely they've advanced to the point of creating a traversable wormhole. But some researchers suggest there may be another way to reach distant places in the universe or alternate dimensions by using the power of the mind. Seattle, Washington, November 1975. Fungi expert Paul Stamets has come upon a recently discovered breed of psilocybin mushrooms. Curious about the mushrooms' psychedelic effects, he consumes them. When he ingested this, he had this fascinating vision of these dead cows in a field. Days later, as he was driving down the road, he saw off on the side this field full of dead cattle. So the question becomes, when he ingested that hallucinogenic, did he travel to some other dimension to see this, or even another point in time? Is it merely an extraordinary coincidence that Paul Stamets had a vision of dead cows in a field, and then saw the exact same scene with his own eyes just a few days later? Or might the psilocybin mushrooms he ingested have opened a mental gateway that gave him a glimpse into another place in space and time? For the longest, it was assumed that when you take these hallucinogenic drugs, that your brain is going hyperactive, and that's why you're seeing things that aren't really there. It turns out recent experiments tell us that's not the case. What we see is right the opposite. During the hallucinogenic phase of this, your brain activity actually decreases to levels as if you were in hypermeditative states. So the question is then, if your brain isn't being very active, why are you experiencing these strange hallucinations? It's being discussed as a real possibility that opening portals and gateways has a psychedelic or a hallucinogenic connection. In many religious traditions around the world, it is believed that entering a hypermeditative state can allow the mind to travel to otherworldly realms. This is something which is known as astral projection. People who, through the power of mind, can experience these other realms and dimensions. These other realms are as populated as our own, and this is practiced in traditions in India and China amongst Native Americans and the like. Buddha, he was the master of astral travel. He could go to the heavens, come back to the earth. He could reach many other dimensions using the power of his mind. This is not symbolic, it's real, and with proper training, we are taught how to experience the realities around us outside of the limitations of the body. In that form, we can and do see other entities. It could be our extraterrestrial visitors who are watching us from the safety of a parallel world. We can go and interact with them. The concept that it is possible to travel to distant locations, other points in time, or even other dimensions while the body remains in one place, has existed in cultures around the world for thousands of years, and this astral travel often involves an altered state of mind. In Mexico and Central America, we have examples of statues and amulets in the shape of psilocybin mushrooms. In North America, we have traditions of cultures using peyote and mescaline and other types of cactuses. In South America, we have the famous ayahuasca plant the Inca used, and the descendants of the Inca still use ayahuasca and extract from the San Pedro cactus to get into alternate states of consciousness. Some believe that it is so powerful that you can actually create or enter into a portal of some kind. Shamans from every part of the world all had similar processes to get into an altered state, using psychoactive substances to somehow connect with parallel existences and parallel worlds. And this is how they were able to make contact with celestial beings, with divine ancestors, and perhaps even extraterrestrials. Why is it so deeply etched in the human psyche that from ancient times and in cultures around the world, they're all describing other dimensions, other realms, and astral travels? And it makes us question whether, in the ancient world, the ability to expand consciousness, to experience other realms, other dimensions, was the natural and normal practice of the peoples, and that was etched deep into our own consciousness and stayed with us to this very day. Is it possible that the transportive power of the mind could actually allow us to peer into other worlds and even communicate with the beings that reside there? Some researchers suggest that scientists may be getting close to developing stargates through which we can physically travel. Santa Barbara, California, November 2022. A team of physicists, led by Caltech Professor Maria Spiripoulou, conducts an extraordinary experiment Using Google's powerful quantum computer, they successfully create an observable, untraversable wormhole. Recently, there's been an experiment in which scientists have been able to detect an observable, untraversable wormhole. Recently, there's been a great concept for an experiment where some scientists are using the Google Sycamore quantum computer to simulate a wormhole. They set up a model of the universe inside the quantum computer, and then, when they turned on the program to run, it would transfer information from one processor to another processor via a wormhole. That's fantastic. How do we go from inside a simulated universe to out here in reality where there's portals and stargates that we can actually use to go from here to wherever you want to go? That's the next step. Modern science has now taken us beyond Einstein. Now we're talking about the fact that space and time could be curved to the point where it may be possible to create gateways to other parts of the galaxy. Stephen Hawking, the great cosmologist, looked into this and says, well, it would be difficult, but yes, it may be possible to build stargates. We're suddenly returning to ideas found in the ancient world about traveling through stargates, going to other worlds by opening doorways. Our science is now geared towards opening these stargates. We now know that the idea of a stargate is real. It's real science, and it's very desirable. Some scientists believe it is only a matter of time before we are able to create a stargate through which humans can safely travel. But if we do open a stargate to another world, how might that change the course of humankind? If wormhole travel ever becomes possible, it would be one of the greatest breakthroughs in the history of the human race. We're talking about opening up not just the Earth, but the entire galaxy for human exploration. Think of the impact to navigate to the stars. If we're able to create an artificial stargate today, this would change everything. Suddenly, we would be able to make instantaneous journeys to the moon, instantaneous journeys to Mars, and instantaneous journeys to other planets and solar systems as well. As long as you are able to create, the computer coordinates for where you want it to go, you'll be able to just make that jump. Stargates can benefit us in a number of different ways, whether it's understanding better the inner workings of the universe, how the various dimensions work, or if we unlock Stargate technology, the skies, or rather the stars, are the limit. And if we had access to stargates and interdimensional travel, it's beyond our comprehension how this would completely change everything. It would be a brand new beginning for the human race, and it's one I hope to see in my lifetime. Is humankind on the precipice of an incredible new reality?